everybody, and welcome to another brand new episode of the Cine-Files Live, brought to you here by the Cine-Files on the Cine-Files YouTube channel. I try to say that as many times as possible in 30 seconds. I am the outlaw, John Rocha, one of your co-hosts for the show today, joined as always by my brother in the Cine-Files, Steve Morris. How are you, Steve?
I am doing very, very well. And I'm actually looking at you through a new webcam because I just got a new monitor and I feel like I look more gold and rosy than I have in the past. I feel sort of healthful.
You feel pretty, one might say?
I might say I feel pretty. We'll see if I'm witty.
Oh, and bright. Let's keep it a bright. And are coming to join us today, which we are just tongue-tied and incredibly excited about, are these two amazing talented, creative people who were our guests 4 years ago, which we just kind of talked about off camera a little bit, for our original exploration of West Side Story from 1961. And we are here to talk about the 1961 version and compare it to the 2021 version. And let's introduce them now. Actress, director, producer, writer, all-around badass, Milena Govich. How are you, Milena?
Hi, I'm great.
And composer, writer, producer, creator, David Cornue joining us as well. David, how are you?
Doing great. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
Good.
Steve, you look really sunny and bright.
I love it. And we are coming to you live here on the channel. So, and remember, ladies and gentlemen, as we go along here, we're going to be talking about everything involved with West Side Story. I want you all to remember we got the Streamlabs and the Super Chats that are open. So if you want to send in a question, a thought, or a comment, and you want us to read it as we're going along, then send them in. We'll read them on screen. And remember, you have two incredible performers here with incredible resumes. If you want to sneak over to their IMDb's and take a look at them, incredible resumes. Ask them questions about their points of view. Some of you have remember the episode from 4 years ago. We were talking off camera. Some of you even have it in your top 10 of the Cine-Files episodes. So this is your chance to maybe ask a question about some of the comments that Milena or David made while we were recording that episode, and see what they think now, looking on to the 2021 version of West Side Story as well. And I'm going to go first to you, Steve. Now, you know, we talked about West Side Story when we were doing the Best Picture breakdowns on my channel in the Oscars series. What do you think now, even more so after the Oscars and the comparison and everything that's going on here? What's your feeling thinking about both of these movies in comparison?
So if you remember, if you listened to our review, I said some pretty bold things about Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. And I rewatched it. And as I'm rewatching it, I went, oh, maybe I wasn't quite right. Maybe this isn't so. And then about a third of the way in, I went, no, this is really something. And so I think this is going to be a fascinating comparison. It's rare that you get a chance to talk about two things that are both so damn good, in my opinion. And it really gives you a chance to explore the filmmaking, to explore the ideas, to explore the story in a different way. I'm super excited.
Absolutely. So we'll go, Milena, I'll go to you first. You're a Broadway actress. Both of you are West Side Story nuts. What was your thoughts before going in to see this version here directed by Steven Spielberg? And what were your thoughts afterwards?
So when I first heard it announced that Steven Spielberg was going to remake West Side Story, my response was no.
She was
that was it.
Having it.
Done. I was
not
out.
Having it.
Not having any of it. I just kept saying, why would you mess with a masterpiece? And yes, there's problematic things. And yes, they were dubbing the singing, but it was so of its time and in its moment. And it was so groundbreaking for that period. Like, just leave it alone. That's so. But then David showed me the trailer and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to go see this movie. And you know, the music alone gets me. I'm weak for Leonard Bernstein. And then so when we went to see, by the way, David and I have only gone to the movie theaters twice during the pandemic.
Wow.
Once in New York to see West Side Story when it opened, and then again in LA to see West Side Story.
Wow.
It's a little sad. But this new film is glorious. Yeah. It's just glorious. I wept. It was stunning. I thought it was so creative. And, you know, Dave and I have talked a lot that in the theater, doing a revival of a musical is very common. That's why we've had so many different Broadway incarnations of West Side Story, of all the great classic musicals. They get done and over. It's rarer to have a movie remake or a movie revival, if you want to call it that. But my favorite thing about stage revivals is when there's a new take, or there's some new level of resonance, or there's an interesting casting choice. Like there was a Broadway revival of West Side Story. I can't remember what year, 10 years ago or 15 maybe now, where they did all of the scenes with the sharks and with Maria in Spanish.
Oh, great.
And it was a really incredible experience. And while it wasn't my favorite version of the show, I loved that they did that. Yeah. So I see this film as another in a long tradition of reinventing and restaging musicals. I think what's so wonderful about this one is that it gave so much additional context to the story, and that was what really made it special to me. Fair enough. I know we're going to dive in deep, but so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, just initial thoughts. Yeah, David, David, you create, you've written stuff, you create stuff, you know what it's like to adapt things possibly, and so certainly Tony Kushner had his work cut out for him, bringing this thing to life. And one of the things I discovered in doing research for this show is that Spielberg came to the show from the original Broadway cast album, not the 1961 movie. So if anyone was possibly equipped to do an adaptation of this, that was different, which Milena referred to here. It seemed like Spielberg was the right director, and Kushner, who initially was trepidatious about this, was the right guy to step in to adapt it and change its approach. You know, I'm thinking of Company for using a female lead as opposed to a male lead, which happened, I think, in London as a different take here. What did you think about it before you walked in? And then what are your thoughts about it even now, after you walked out, and even now all this time later?
Yeah, and before going in to see it, I think I was hopeful and terrified. I really wanted it to be good. It's such a perfect, brilliant piece that I didn't want a bad version of it out living in the world forevermore. And fortunately, everyone stepped up with their A game. And I would say, including and perhaps especially Tony Kushner. He took everything that was brilliant about the original stage musical, and even pieces from the 61 film, and then brought it into this film and said, yes, and not, well, why don't we try this over here? He took what was there and he built upon it and deepened it. And as Milena said, contextualized it in such a brilliant way. It was breathtaking numerous times going through the story of how he enriched moments with deepening characters, strengthening points of view, but using all the kernels that were already there in the material.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with probably all three of you. I had a lot of, as a Latino, I had a lot of trepidation about this, because I'm like, oh, great, another white director is going to come in and tell this story. What are they possibly going to have to say? This thing, I'm so protective of this, because we rarely have any Latino classic films that we're involved in that are, revered by the general populace. So I was very nervous that this was going to be a clumsy attempt, or because Spielberg has been kind of off and on over the last few years as well as a director with some of his movies. So I was worried. But after that trailer, like Milena, when I saw that trailer, I was like, all right. And then I walked in there, and afterwards I cried at the end. I mean, I sat there with my half a bag of Reese's Pieces, just crying in the theater because of so much of the Latino representation here that I knew was missing, but I didn't know how much I was needing it to be a part of the story. And seeing like the experiences that I've had growing up, the vacillation between Spanish and English, having conversations in Spanish so naturally just pop up, and the genius to not put subtitles underneath it. I did not even think that was an option that could happen, right? And Spielberg saying, I did that because I didn't want English to be the dominant language in this film. I wanted it to be an equal type of approach. And then seeing the changes in Bernardo, and then adding this element that Chino is an educated guy that Bernardo wants to protect him and get him out of here. Go represent us in a better way. We are the mongrels who first came. You can be something better. You can change people's perception of us, and all of that. It just really,
and so many things with that, with Chino, that he and Maria are dancing together when she first sees Tony now.
Right.
That's kind of brilliant. And the whole story plot point with the gun and how that plays out and how it lands, the one that Riff buys lands in Chino's hands. So that's all pretty amazing.
Yeah, Chino is one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
Well, he really tracks as a full human, I think. And I think one of the big differences with the original is very iconic. This is iconic young love. This is people represent things. And now they're much more human. And Chino is a person you really don't get to know at all in the original. And now they track his whole journey in this complicated way. And the choice that Tony can't get into the Rumble and Chino helps him to lift that door makes him responsible on some level for what happened. That's like one example of something that happens over and over again in the movie, which is a small choice that adds far deeper resonance to the whole thing.
Well, causality all the way through. All the way through.
And it's like, next 5 years, or is it last 5 years, where they cross that one moment where they cross as they're telling the story from different, chronologically in different places. Chino and Tony, in a way, Tony is trying to run from the gang as Chino is trying to be in the gang.
Yeah.
But when he's helping him, it's that one moment of crossover until, of course, the tragic ending. But it's that crossover that they finally connect in some way. And all the stuff that it leads to is so heartbreaking, for sure.
Well, and it's great because at the, I know we'll get into all the details, but like the new scene with Chino's got the gun at the boxing ring.
Yes.
And the other sharks are like, stand down, stand down. And now Chino is the most dangerous of the gang. So his character has done a full reversal by the end of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Caught up in this idea, and it is part of our community, caught up in this idea of being masculine, this idea of macho, this idea of fighting and defending your family. We just saw, to make a little bit of a connection, Will Smith trying to defend what he did during a speech saying Richard Williams was a fierce defender of his family. It's this mentality you get caught up in when you're not looking at the whole picture and you're caught up in revenge and you're caught up in the pain. And it's tragic too, because you saw their connection as Bernardo and Chino. You saw that Bernardo loved Chino, wanted to help Chino, wanted Chino to aspire to be more, to not be them. So it's almost like a father saying to his son, I box so you don't have to. I struggle so you don't have to. I want you to do. And that is a huge part of the immigrant Latino community. My father said that to me many, many times. And I loved how that touched what we were going through. Another connective here, and let's talk about this. Maria, right? Rachel Zegler being Latina of Colombian descent here. The entire cast, I think there was 34 Puerto Rican characters, 20 of which were actually of Puerto Rican descent or Puerto Rican, and the rest were all Latinos of that, or Latinx, however you want to use the term. But what did you feel about Rachel Zegler's performance versus Natalie Wood's performance? And I'll go to Milena on this one. Milena, thoughts on the performances between both of these actresses and how they handled it, and how did you feel Rachel's modernization, so for lack of a better term, even though it is set in the 1950s, what you felt about her performance here, especially as an 18-year-old?
Oh my gosh. Well, she was transcendent. I thought she was just stunning. Her voice is glorious. And, that actually, for me, that is the biggest improvement in the Tony and Maria performances across the board, is the fact that they're doing their own singing. Those two actors, Natalie Wood and Richard Bamer, back in the day, were overdubbed with a different singer singing all the stuff. So they were lip syncing to someone else in those performances. And while the performances in 1961 movie were great, there's a hair of a disconnect when it's not their voices. But when you hear them go from speeching, talking, from speech to singing, and it's, you sense that connection in a visceral way. And so across the board, that heightened both those performances for me. Rachel brought so much authenticity. I think her age was a huge asset. I think
Mm.
Natalie Wood was like in her late 20s when
Yeah.
she did the role.
Yeah.
And that youthfulness and the ambition that she has, which I think also plays in the stage version and in the original movie,
Mm.
but they really heightened it. I think in the writing, the moments where she puts on the lipstick and she's going to go out, and then Bernardo gets home and she takes it off and then she puts it on again before she leaves. So we see her struggle even with that staging, and that's Spielberg and Kushner coming up with that.
Yeah.
That those details in that staging really illuminates her perspective and her drive and her want in this story. I also love.
Looks like they froze up a little. I don't know from my angle.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there you are. You're moving again.
Are we moving again? Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, you guys are fine. Yeah.
But no, I thought she was perfect casting,
Mhm.
and she had so much depth. It's very rare for an actor that young with that little experience
Right.
to give a performance like that, to have the confidence to give a performance like that. And again, I gotta give props to our friend Mr. Spielberg for creating an environment where a young actor like that can blossom, where they're not intimidated or scared, but really nurtured into that. And as an actor myself who started young, that's not an easy thing to create. So
These kids nowadays, they have such inner confidence nowadays. Where's the struggle and the doubt? Where is all that? Because she has just embraced it at such a young age, and also on social media. Now she's going to be in Shazam, and she's the Snow White. Like, it's incredible to see how quickly she's ascending to iconic status. She merely tossed a tweet out that she wasn't invited to the Oscars, and people went insane, and she got invited 6 days later, which is crazy.
wow. Yeah.
David, what did you think about how they approached the Maria character here? And if you can, and what did you think about Tony, to throw it in? I mean, Tony is given this new background that is, he almost murdered a rival gang member. He's got anger issues, and the job at Doc's is more like a last post for him, or last outpost for him, rather than, hey, the youth board said I have to be here, so I'm here and I'm happy doing it. This is more like, this has got to work or I'm lost.
Right.
So what did you think about how they approached Tony?
All the things you're bringing up, I think, just really enriched both Tony and Maria. The backstories that were brought to bear. Tony, having been in prison for a year, when he comes back, probation officers, why he can't go to the dance, he can't go out and be with the Jets in any way. I think that just brought so much to the role and to us caring about him, and seeing that anger streak in him was really interesting, because in the 61 version, you just see a good guy. You don't quite see the Jet in him as much.
Right. We don't know why he's the like preeminent Jet.
Right.
Yeah.
We only know it in the 61 movie because Riff says so.
Correct.
Right.
But in this, when Tony starts beating Bernardo and you see that look in his eye, you go, and they beautifully set it up when he's talking to Riff. I almost killed that guy, and I don't want to be that. I felt a darkness in me, and all of that was just so
and his
beautifully
confession
done.
to Maria in the
Maria.
cloisters, the new scene at the cloisters, which was phenomenal. Like to having that whole sequence replace the dress shop, going into One Hand, One Heart, was phenomenal. That whole sequence on the subway, and sorry, not to hijack
Maria, no, it's fine.
a lot of causality was created by just starting, like dropping the little Easter egg of that backstory.
And with Maria, similarly, she had been there 5 years before her brother showed up.
Right.
She had established herself. She's a little older. She's paying rent. She's trying to find her way of assimilating or not. And, all of that was really, really beautifully done. Milena talked about the lipstick moment. There are a number of moments where, the movie is 6 minutes longer than the 61 version.
Which is crazy.
Yes. But it's, there's all these little behavioral moments that Spielberg and Kushner found, like the lipstick, like the scherzo when she wakes up in the morning and she tries to mess up her bed.
That scene's so great. It's so
It's
cute.
incredible.
It's so awesome.
It's so good. You get into
and fun fact, that music is pulled from the ballet. From the stage production.
Oh wow. Yeah, all right.
So it's part of Somewhere originally. And I thought it was a really good programmatic use of it. It was very clever. And she was perfectly in time with it. You know, it was beautifully choreographed. But it was also getting into her mind, getting into this love story. Those moments really brought the love story to life even more, I think.
Yeah. Steve, thoughts on the love story here? I mean, Milena and David have been going deep into this. And what was your feeling as you watched the different approaches to both of these characters? And then, as Milena mentioned, them changing the location from the dress shop to the cloisters, and then seeing this more potent energy between the both of them, and their heads not in the clouds, Steve, like it is in the 1961 version, where they're like, oh, everything's going to work out. We're going to be great. They're more realistic about how this could implode on them. And so that scene in the cloisters has more strength to it by the end, because it gives them hope to believe in a possibility that won't happen, sadly. Tragically doesn't happen, but still adds another layer to their relationship and their connection that makes the audience connect to them even more.
So if you were to go back and listen to our original West Side Story episode, which I strongly recommend you do, one of my favorite moments is when I revealed how angry Tony and Maria make me because of their naivete and the poor choices they make and their lack of responsibility. And this movie solves all of that. And what's interesting, Milena, you mentioned that Maria, she has so much more youth because the actor is younger. And what I think is incredible is that she is both more youthful and more mature.
Yeah.
Right.
Because she is thinking about this whole situation. And so, and I think that trip to the cloisters is them going, no, this is a big deal. We understand this problem. And yet, and I even get a better sense of their love for each other because of it, because you can see them, even though we have this big struggle, that we're still on the same page on some level. And I think, and David, what you mentioned, in some ways, this movie clarified a thing for me, which is, I've talked about this idea before of how many good ideas does it take to make a great movie. And in this movie, it's literally, oh, they put the camera right there. Oh, they have more of the fire escape between them as they're trying to talk to each other. Like, oh, the camera rolls around, so we're seeing Rita Moreno's reaction while we're hearing this. I mean, just every single, or like you think about, like, and I mentioned this, John, when we talked before, the one thing, I think if I were to pick straight up choreography, I think the 61 is better. But if I were to pick what they do with the choreography, how they ground it in this reality, and Cool being a really good example of it, and I love the original Cool. That is fantastic. Yes. But this one has so much more storytelling and character in it because they've grounded it within a story,
You touched upon something that Milena and I debated a lot after seeing it, the how Cool was reapproached, and that from a story standpoint, it is off the charts great what they do with it. And we both missed the original choreography.
The original Cool is like some of my favorite choreography ever, and so I really miss that and that whole group number. However, dramaturgically, it's so much stronger where it is. And interestingly, there are some stage productions that flip-flop Cool and I Feel Pretty.
That's right.
Because in the movie, that's where I Feel Pretty happens. And then Cool comes after the Rumble. And now we have Cool before the Rumble and I Feel Pretty as the relief after it.
And I Feel Pretty coming after the Rumble makes it all the more tragic. It makes it all, because you know what's going to happen. And setting it in gimbals, I think, was kind of genius.
It was fantastic.
Smart.
I loved it. Loved it.
I think, it's always been the most challenging song to kind of earn. And the placement of it and the location of it really, like, you even could sell that weird lyric, or maybe it's fleas. She picks up sand and throws it. I was like, they thought of everything to make it feel like it's coming out of the moment. It's just
the whole film is so much more grounded and so much more realistic this time around. Yet it's still very theatrical.
Yeah.
and it still embraces the tone of the source material. And you know what, just hearkening back to the subway ride up to the cloisters and that whole new sequence, just giving that the gravity but funnily enough, the transition into the subway.
We talked about this.
Did we talk about this?
Well,
We talked about this on the other
original,
one. How
yeah.
the new subways, there's some sort of converter that makes the tritone.
Yeah.
That's what the subway does now. They put that sound into the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the transition as they start walking down the set. And it's not the right subway sound.
No,
those cars back then did not have that fancy
back
electric
in the 50s,
converter.
but we will accept that.
But it's there. I was
Creative
giddy.
license. Yeah.
But as far as like what Steve was saying about changing the locations of some of these big production numbers, it's the 61 film was more true to the stage.
Yes.
And, you know, America was on a rooftop because when you're on a stage, you can set up a rooftop pretty easily and you have a contained space where the number happens. And you have to, on stage, you need to reuse sets. So we're using the dress shop / their apartment over and over for sets. And so the 61 film was more in that vein.
Right.
And by really opening up the locations, which you can do in a film so much easier, I think you again get so much more context. And having Cool on the docks was so exciting. Having I Feel Pretty in the dress shop made it so real. Because of course the community, that's a community of women that when somebody else shows up into town right off the boat, oh, come with me, I'll get you a job. Right. The night shift cleaning at the department store, you know? Yeah. And it makes sense. Everything just makes sense. And I think my favorite, if we're talking about choreography reinvention, is America. To move that into the street and make it a number about the entire community.
It's no longer the sharks. It's the whole community.
It's everybody, and feeling it and seeing all the different locations it was glorious. And then the kids dancing at the end, like a little dozen of the young kids get up and start doing the thing. You just feel that this is, we're seeing the fabric of this community.
Well, I compare it to In the Heights, right? There's that sequence around the community when they have those dancing and then dancing on the walls, on the side of the walls. They're the great allusion to Fred Astaire. It's about Washington Heights. That's what they're celebrating. America is about celebrating America, right? As an immigrant, right? And that's what the lyrics are telling you. And we saw it in the 1961 original on the rooftop, and Anita's going at Bernardo. Bernardo's coming up some very funny stuff. But switching it out onto the street, first of all, it allows Anita to have the power even more so throughout because of that bright yellow dress. And she's the one you're focusing on. But you're having them show all the sights of America within their neighborhood that they love, that they appreciate, that they feel unbound by now being here, that they're kind of have some kind of connection or possession of that allows them to feel at least a piece of this country. And I love that throughout. Steve, what did you think about the differences in terms of the staging? You mentioned the choreography. That's what started us here. Do you like the choreography here for America, or do you like the choreography in the 1961 original?
So it's funny, right? An hour or so before we did this, I sent you, and I don't know if you got a chance to look, someone cut together both versions of America and intercut them. And it really illustrates this so well. And it's Milena, it's exactly, I had the same thought that you did. It is the one on the rooftop is like you're on a stage. Yeah. And it's fantastic. And Rita Moreno is amazing. And it's great. But opening it up to the streets created so much more energy. First of all, those costumes are absolutely spectacular. The use of color is amazing. And then this is the thing, I've said this before on our podcast, that I think Spielberg, following in the tradition of Alfred Hitchcock, is the greatest storyteller of filmmakers in terms of clearly showing you exactly what you need to see so that you understand what's going on. And if you look at America, what he does throughout is like when they're talking about, they make you pay twice or whatever that is, someone's buying something. Yeah. It's that he's using visual moments within the song to actually illustrate the points that are being made rather than just a staged dance thing, which what's so funny about this conversation? All four of us love that 1961 movie.
Oh yeah,
we all love it.
absolutely.
And so it's not.
And I always will.
Yeah, I'm never going to say anything negative about that, but I do have like, wow, there's so many choices. Another one, by the way, you asked about the choreography, and I don't know quite. Milena, maybe you could.
Oh, Steve froze a little bit.
Am I back? Am I there?
Yeah,
Hello?
you're back now. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, your voice is back. There you go. Okay.
Okay. Is Milena, maybe you could speak about the choreography more specifically, but it was like in the original, they've told us that fighting is dancing.
Mhm.
And in this one, it's more like they dance through real fights. You know what I mean?
There's an
Like
anger
the-
to the dancing here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it is, I mean, and as a martial arts person, they're doing real fighting things,
Oh yeah.
but they're doing it to the rhythm and within a dance sort of structure, it seems like.
Yeah. No, I love that. That was one of my favorite things about the opening. The
Yeah.
whole opening prologue was that it gets violent.
Hmm.
And again, I feel like the 61 movie was just hanging more traditionally onto a stage version where you can't really do that because nobody can do that 8 times a week without somebody getting hurt. And you don't have camera cheats and all that. But yeah, to actually make this really violent and make Riff and Bernardo intimidating figures. It's wonderful. And what's great about it is the choreography goes right into the violence and right back out of it. They're not different things. To me, they're all one thing. You go in from doing a jeté and then you come out of it and punch a guy. It is great. To me, that's what you always want it to be. It's the same with the dialogue going into song. You don't want it to feel like, and now we're going to sing. It's not a different thing. It's the same emotional moment. You're just using your body or your voice or your expression in a different way. But like that subtextual through line, it just stays strong.
That energy is. Sorry, go ahead, John.
I was just gonna say it solved the problem that people have made fun of the film for 50 years of the whole dancing and then I'm gonna punch you. It made it more potent to see the combination in this version for sure. Sorry, go ahead, David.
Yeah, no, the cohesion between the dance and the violence, it's all united now. And you also see, like, if you think about the paint can, someone getting hit with a paint can when they're right in that first moment when they're putting paint all over the wall, and it's on a downbeat, it's musical, but it is all of a sudden, okay, this is something new for us now. And Baby John getting the nail in his ear, you just sense more and more violence. But even in the dance itself, like Mike Faced, who we got to just talk about this guy.
Yeah, I was gonna. Definitely going to be next subject. Yeah,
he is just amazing because there's so many traps to that role, and there's such. I would imagine an actor would have such a seduction of trying to do Russ Tamlyn in some way, and instead he found his version of it, which was scary and intimidating and broken and all these wonderful things. But when he is fighting at the end of Cool, and he does his final dance turn there and has his final line to Tony, you sense the violence in this guy through dance.
Yeah. The dancing is the epitome of the loose cannon.
Right.
Yeah.
That he is.
Right.
And that performance is maybe my favorite in the movie because there's, like David said, there's so many traps there and it's so easy to overplay a lot of that. Yeah. But you sense him just trying to keep himself in control all the time by underplaying all these moments. And so that when he does bust out and you see it come, like it feels inevitable. And the dance really is what is coming out of him. That's his true, all that anger and bitterness and resentment and rage. That's all coming out in the dance versus in the dialogue necessarily. So I found it.
It's also a setup and payoff all the way through. So if you think about Cool, that moment,
I was going to say exactly the same thing, David. I totally agree. Yeah.
The previous scene is in the bar where he's buying the gun. Yeah. The Irishman behind the bar starts talking about pointing. He just puts it up to his head.
It's brilliant.
Might as well.
He mentions his dad.
The bartender saying, "You remind me of your dad."
Yeah.
And that's why he sells the gun.
And then it's like, that we just feel, again, with all the contextualizing that Tony Kushner did, we feel who Riff is. We get a sense of where he came from, and that he's in some ways the most fatalistic character because he's doomed. He and everybody else knows it. Even Officer Schrank is like, you're going to end up in Rikers, mark my word,
Well, and I think that's what's great about Riff. And Steve, I want to get your thoughts on this as well. I mean, with Tony, there is this feeling of like, this has got to work or else I'm going to end up in prison for the rest of my life. With Riff, it's more like they're taking everything away from me. So what do I have left to live for? I'm going to fight for this till they kill me. And so there is more of a fatalistic approach to this Riff, where the Riff in the 1961 original is more hopeful about getting a piece of our land, a territory, getting that piece of land. This is more from the beginning, seeing that developer sign, seeing the rubble, which of course mirrors the opening of the 1961 original, but seeing the rubble, and it symbolizes something else. It symbolizes that gentrification is happening, that they're all being moved out regardless of that. And so Riff is taking that on, and since he can't fight the developers or the police or the rich people, he fights the Puerto Ricans. They're the most immediate thing. And in a way, it's working this new approach to this version of West Side Story, in that they want you to fight amongst yourselves so that you don't fight them. And it seems like that's the approach they were having here. And Riff really symbolizes that. What's your take on Mike Faist's version of Riff compared to Russ Tamlin's, and how he's kind of symbolizing this approach that they're taking, Kushner and Spielberg, with retelling the story?
I think he's absolutely fantastic. I agree with everything that's been said. And I think what's so interesting about his character is how it resonates throughout and changes all the relationships around him. Because it's like, we're told in the first movie that he and Tony are, running buddies, and that Tony was a big part of the gang, but I don't have a sense of their relationship in the 61 film. Whereas here I do. And I see two things. One is Riff desperately needs Tony emotionally. It's not just that he needs him to for this rumble, is that he needs this guy to keep him level. And Tony is more like, someone who's an alcoholic and they go into a program and you can't hang out with your friends that drink anymore. Is Tony's got that anger in him. He's got that violence in him, and he can't be around Riff. And then also because of the placement of Cool and what they do with it is where before, which I always disliked, was Tony convinces them to do like a one man on one man thing. Right. And then Maria convinces him to go back and stop the whole fight. I'm like, no, you were good. Like, that's really dumb. Whereas in this one, Tony has failed to stop it. That's a way better motivation. So like all of these things, and then what it builds to, man, Riff's death is, I mean, it wrecked me. It was just so incredibly done.
And I think it's a crime that more of the Academy voters didn't see this movie. I think it's a crime that they don't understand, as you two pointed out, Milena and David, the pitfalls of this character, which makes what Mike Faist did with this character even more of a standout performance, even more of one worthy of an Oscar nomination.
Absolutely.
Right. And I agree with you, Milena. I think he is the best part of the movie, even though everyone's, for the most part, is great. His is this battering ram of combustible live wire energy, as Steve pointed out, affecting everyone around him. Whereas Russ is not as much of a battering ram. Faist is like, do what I want or everything ends. Like, it's just.
But you also get these tiny moments of vulnerability from him.
Oh yeah,
in the basement of the store. Like, he's standing on the stairs, and I don't remember the line is, but he's like, I got nothing left. And what am I supposed to look forward to?
And even earlier in that scene where they're talking through the shelves, and Tony starts talking about his time upstate and had some time to think, and you just it's a reverse on Riff listening, and you see in Faist's eyes this pain of like, we're growing apart. And he cuts off. He's like, maybe you're just too deep for me now, and walks away. And you just know he can't go there and survive.
And then his dancing.
I
mean, he is one of the finest dancers that I've seen on screen.
Wow.
His technique is fantastic. He is I mean, you could put him in a ballet company. He is that good.
Strong
And
praise.
so you put that level of skill on top of, I think, a completely Oscar-worthy acting performance, and he's singing on top of it, and he's scary.
Yeah.
Doing all of it at the same time.
Sure.
The degree of difficulty in that role is just extraordinary, and he nailed it for me.
Let's hit some super chats here. They're building up here. This Phil O'Brien saying, slight sidebar to discuss in addition to West Side Story. Question for the four of you. What Broadway show would you like to see get the full film treatment, either again or for the first time? Fun to have musicals talk. All right.
Boy, I don't know. Oh my
boy.
gosh, that's a hard question. All of them?
Yeah. Can we just do a new movie musical every month for the rest of our lives?
That would be nice.
Boy, I don't know. That's really tough. Got to think on it for a second.
I think I'd love a new Sweeney Todd. As much
That was what I was going to say.
I was going there, but I avoided because we already have a Sweeney Todd.
I don't want to
It just
jump
wasn't
on,
very
on
No, there's
good.
nothing wrong with. I mean, the Tim Burton one is okay, but I missed the chorus. I missed the dread of that not coming
And the
back to the whole
singing, like,
movie.
people were singing well in that, but
Yeah,
those deserve big Broadway voices.
I
And
agree.
I guess
get
that would I guess that's what I would say, regardless of whatever musical it is. I would love for West Side Story to this version of West Side Story to usher the way into actually hiring people that can sing and dance and also act for these roles. It makes a massive difference. And I know you don't get, there are only a handful of movie stars. Like you have your Hugh Jackman and
Right.
you know, there's not a lot of others that can do it all. But they are out there, and it's a great opportunity for young people too. And I would just hope that the producers of the world that are looking at me doing musicals would really strongly consider that.
You know what would make a very interesting feature that would be odd, but actually I think would adapt very well to a film is Hadestown.
Yes.
Which I've never seen.
Love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be great.
That's a great idea.
That's my vote. Hadestown.
All right. I think Milena was referencing Chicago. I'm not going to say that. Steve, what would you say? What would you redo? Is there one you'd redo or want to see?
Well, I think it's hilarious that all of us were thinking Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
Because that was my answer too, because it just doesn't have the depth and the power that I listened to that soundtrack over and over again, and it's just, the movie just isn't that.
George Hearn is still my favorite to ever do it. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And so the one that just occurred to me is what Richard Linklater is doing right now, which is, do you know what he's doing?
No. Which one?
He is doing Merrily We Roll Along over the next 20 years, the way he did Boyhood.
Are you serious? That's awesome.
Wow.
You know who the cast is?
I do not.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I'll Google it later. Oh, that's fascinating.
What year?
Isn't it? What?
What year are they in?
Yeah,
I think they're like 2 years in.
Okay.
Something like that.
A while to wait.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to some other ones here. Mackenzie asked, and Mackenzie's got a few here. So, what are your thoughts on Spielberg not including the instrumental reprise of America when the Jets attack Anita? This reprise to me subtly symbolized the destruction of Anita's American dream. Interesting. Thoughts?
I think their homage to that moment is when one of the Jets turns on the jukebox.
Right.
But it's not America.
It's Mambo.
It's Mambo.
I think it's Mambo. Yeah, it's Mambo.
So the moment is still there. I think they shifted it, and I actually like that because it's more diegetic into the piece. It's not score. It's in the room, and there's a moment where it's on, and then there's a moment where it gets turned off, and so it becomes much more intentional in the scene, and so I loved that.
Yeah.
And, David, Steve, any thoughts?
Well,
same answer. Yeah.
Here's what I would say. I think the use of America in the original version was absolutely brilliant. I think it absolutely. I mean, I can't say that scene isn't an amazing scene, and I think this scene is so painful and so scary that real. I would not change a fucking thing. I mean, the girlfriend's trying to get her out, and anybody saying don't go in there, and all of the, And then Rita Moreno, man, I mean, like, it is so
It's very
profound.
powerful. And,
Yeah.
and as David pointed out when we were rewatching it, that it's Graciela that starts it.
Mhm.
She says, "Oh, you come in here speaking Spanish," and
Yeah.
that starts getting people riled up.
Right.
Not that it wouldn't happen without her saying that, but that's the first thing that's said. And then the girls trying to protect her, trying to pull her out, and I didn't notice it until this time when we watched it again yesterday, that if you see out the window, the girls are there.
Oh,
the
yeah.
entire scene, and more of them have come.
Yep.
There's a whole group of the girls at the window, trying to get them to stop, and then all just standing there when Valentina comes out.
There's also with anybody's just at the moment when they finally get acceptance.
Good job, buddy boy.
Good job, buddy boy. Walk through that threshold and has to make a choice and says leave.
Yeah.
And still, has the humanity in them. So
that
I thought
scene
that was
is just it's phenomenal.
So
and I
ratcheted
said,
up on
as soon
all
as we
levels.
saw the movie for the first time, I said, I pointed to Ariana DeBose and I was like, that is the hardest job in the movie business, is to be given a role and to do an Oscar-winning speech to the lady that won the Oscar for it. How do you not get self-conscious? How do you not get in your head? How do you make it your own? She's standing right there, your idol. Oh my gosh. As an actor, I would
serious props for that.
I think that's why the movie works.
Much less, give the whole emotional speech like that.
Right.
It's the guts and the confidence of all these actors that makes the movie work. Because even if you're not Anita DeBose, you're Mike Feist or you're Ansel or you're Rachel, she's still there, Rita, and she's the executive producer. So that feeling of, am I capturing what they want? And then, of course, when you hear Rita, she speaks about certain things that bothered her since the beginning about the movie. So in a way, they were kind of being her vessels of change.
Well, she's such a generous collaborator I don't know her personally, but for everything I know of her and everything I've seen, she's very open and very encouraging, very nurturing. And so from what I've heard, that she was very much a resource on the set and happy to talk to people and give them her counsel however they needed it, and
it's a
be a
brilliant
mentor.
piece of casting. I think that we saw something about how Spielberg called her and said, "We want you to come do this," and she said, "I'm sorry, I don't do cameos." And she's like, no. Kushner actually wrote you a role, and that they took the Valentina, the Puerto Rican point of view instead of Doc. But she's married to Doc. They're Romeo and Juliet 1.0, and we're watching Romeo and Juliet 2.0. And it's really interesting how that created so much history and understanding. And yes, what Milena was saying about her being such a great mentor, I think that there are great actors doing great roles, and then there are also great casts.
Yeah.
And you can sense that this cast had a community, that they were all in the same world, in the same show, supporting each other.
And I do want to say one more on this. Mackenzie, you bring up Anita's The Destruction of the American Dream. In a way, Valentina, when she is singing Somewhere, having experienced her own interracial relationship, thinking that they were paving the way for it to be better for interracial relationships coming behind them, in a way, her dream of that goal is destroyed. So Rita Moreno again is singing about the destruction of something that she had believed in as a different character in a version of the same movie. And just incredible how that works.
And the way that song starts with her and Doc, and we photographs seeing them together is beautiful. Milena and I have a little bit of a controversial
I don't know if
thing.
We're going to talk about things that we maybe didn't.
Yeah, let's get to that in a little bit.
Let's say that. I figure we would talk about that later.
Mackenzie also wants to know, what are your thoughts on Spielberg not including? Oh, I already said that. Sorry. Mackenzie asked another one. He says, "What are your thoughts on G. Officer Krupke's placement?" Steve, you were talking about placement of these movies or songs. I wish it was done after the Rumble, because in this version, it felt like we lost the Jets after the Rumble until the scene with Anita. So, what do you think about that, Steve?
Well, I definitely don't want it to be after the Rumble. I think, you know, things are too heavy for that song. I think Krupke's the one I'm the most mixed on, actually, in terms of what they did with it.
Putting it mostly in the police station.
Yeah. I think the staging at the police station is really cool. And they did all sorts of inventive things as they do throughout the movie. I wanted Riff to be in it. You know, I think that's the biggest thing. I wanted Riff in Officer Krupke. Yeah. Really? Like, I don't care that much about those characters. I don't really know them. And Russ Tamblyn sort of leads the whole song in the 61 version, right? Yeah, that's what I missed.
But you took Cool from the guys and gave it to Riff, so you got to let the guys have something without Riff. I feel like I don't
have to do anything. I
sort
do
of
whatever I want.
Yeah.
Steve, counterpoint to what you're saying, I liked it for the reason that I felt like we got to know the other Jets more. We got to see more of them and get their personalities and their points of view. And the staging was so wonderful and clever and fun. I would not want to see that after the Rumble. I don't think that the tone just wouldn't sell. But I liked that we got to know those characters a little bit more.
Counterpointing. I definitely think the placement of it worked pretty well. I liked that it was used as, we know there's going to be a Rumble. You need to tell us where it's going to be. That was a good use of that song. It was a good place for it. But without us having Riff there, we don't really have a sense of the Sharks. We have a sense of a few people that we kind of know on the periphery, but it's not their story, you know? And we need the Jets. Yeah. And it's not their story. And so we need an anchor point with someone like Riff there, even if he's not driving the scene. That's my opinion.
And always sad that Brian Darcy James doesn't sing one word in the whole movie.
I know. One of the most glorious voices on that thing. Oh no!
And yet he still found the button.
Funny though. Oh God, he was so great.
Yeah,
he was just fabulous. All of his moments were fantastic.
Yep.
Mackenzie also wants to know: do you think Spielberg should have done either "I Feel Pretty" or "A Boy Like That" in Spanish, like they did in the 2009 revival production? Let me answer this one first. I will say this: it would have been nice, but I don't think we're there yet as a society. We're gonna get there because more and more Latino stories are finally being told in mainstream ways. And Spielberg alluded in an interview that Spanish is the second language here in the United States, obviously. So I think the time is coming where we will have a version of this film, maybe 20, 30, 40 years from now again, that has a number all in Spanish, and it's more accepted amongst the mainstream audience. Would have been nice to see, but I think with what he created, the fact that there was so much Spanish already in the movie, I think might have been a bridge too far if he had thrown that song, either of those songs in Spanish. What do you guys think?
Well, I have a couple thoughts about it. The first thing is you sort of need to set the tone for the whole show. You can't really just have all of a sudden we have one song that's in Spanish.
Right. Good point.
You need to make a stronger storytelling choice in the thank you. The revival of which I spoke of was in 2009. Right. So I don't understand time clearly. But it's in that production, I Feel Pretty was in Spanish, and A Boy Like That was in Spanish. You know, they made the choice to have all those songs in another language, and it was cohesive throughout the thing. So you can't really just drop in and say, let's just have one or two in Spanish. The thing about A Boy Like That would be, and having seen that production, I am not a Spanish speaker, and I'm also a big fan of opera, so I'm used to watching things in other languages. But so I think I would go on the ride for that. But as you said, our audience isn't attuned to that. And it's also such massive, pivotal character moments for both of them, both Anita and Maria, that if you lose the context, if your audience, and it's a long it's two songs. It's A Boy Like That and I Have a Love. So you're doing this whole sequence, and if your audience checks out, you really lose a lot.
Yeah, the way they constructed it, Anita was very clear. Speak English. So you had that Latina character, which is a thing in the Latino community. Certainly my mom was always saying that. Speak English. So yeah. Sorry, David, you were going to say?
Well, actually, I was just going to bring up the same thing, John,
Mm.
that they do set it up in the story quite nicely with that moment where, David Alvarez he keeps reverting to Spanish.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
Oh,
like
it's
English.
hysterical.
It's great
It's
moment.
so great.
But it sets up that she is trying to assimilate and
Yeah.
that, she expects everyone to be speaking English in the house. So that does support it. And then there's the technical side of the lyricist having made contributions. These are the lyrics to this musical by changing it into Spanish. That's difficult. I can't remember. I'm probably going to be wrong on both points, but I think the 2009 was directed by Arthur Lawrence, who wrote the book, and that the translations were Lin-Manuel.
Yeah. They were.
So there was some precedent for it. Certainly, I think that the response from the audience for that particular production was, I just felt lost for a while.
Yeah. So my feeling about this, first of all, I loved all the Spanish that was in the film.
Mhm.
And I think they did a great job. Kushner did a great job of, now I took a little bit of high school Spanish, so maybe it was easier for me, but of making it a line where even if you didn't understand what they were saying, you understood what they were saying because of how it was intercut with English, because of how it was said, that you were able to follow along. And I would have been happy with more Spanish like that. But I would say, in terms of I Feel Pretty and what was the other song?
Boy Like That.
Boy Like That. Thank you. There's a certain point where it's like, if it's working, don't fuck with it. I Feel Pretty is fucking an amazing number. There's so much they added to it. And what I loved is it went away from being sort of vain and youthful to being silly and, just
hopeful.
And it's like, no, it was fantastic. So I wouldn't change a goddamn thing.
Jesus.
Is what I would say.
Very angry response. All right. Brendan Marr says, I love this film. One of the things I loved about it is the casting of Rita Moreno. Instead of it being just a cameo, her role as Valentina is a fully fleshed out character who adds so much to the story. I also love that she got to sing somewhere. So since that I think that leads to something that Milena was referring to. So let's talk about Rita Moreno's Valentina. David mentioned she did that interview when she said, I don't do cameos. And maybe explain why Russ Hamlin isn't in the movie either. He doesn't do cameos. He's still walking the earth. So but the way they mixed her into here was so interesting and so fascinating. But clearly I've heard from quite a few people that didn't like that she is the one that gets to sing somewhere near the end there, that they felt it should have been maybe Tony and Maria who do that, or in the way it works. What did you guys think about how Rita Moreno was weaved into this as Valentina, and then were there any kind of negatives throughout the movie about it?
Well, why don't I take the first part and you take the second part? Sure. So, I mean, we haven't rehearsed, but I know we both have very similar feelings about this. So I love that Somewhere starts with Valentina and on the picture of her and Doc, and highlighting everything that you brought up about her trying, hoping, dreaming to pave the way for interracial relationships and having just had a huge tragedy. It's wonderful. And she is so great. However, giving her the entire song and having that theme, that musical theme assigned to that character is a huge loss, in my opinion. So if I had one note for Mr. Spielberg, so far be it from me to tell him what to do.
He's home watching this right now.
I know.
I'm sure he is.
But I thought it would have been lovely if after the first verse is Valentina, and then it would hand off to Maria, who actually is the one that should be singing that song.
Right.
And so then it becomes their mutual song. Valentina's handing off her hope to Maria, and it's then because that theme is such a fatalistic theme, it has hope to it, but it's the signs of tragedy. We know love is doomed. The whole idea of someday is not today, and we know not today, and it's never happening today, but we're gonna dream anyway, right? So the problem really comes at the end of the movie.
Right.
And,
is that my handoff?
Yeah, that's you can talk about why I was so mad.
Okay, so when Tony is dying and Maria is there singing to him in the 61 on the stage forevermore, it's always been singing somewhere there, and instead she's singing Tonight.
Yeah.
Night is falling in love. It's hope. It's all these. It's not the right mood. There's nothing fatalistic
Twitter
about
pated.
it. Right. And
It's the wrong theme.
it's the wrong
The wrong theme.
somewhere. and the moment between Tony and Maria, or however it's been done in Dream Ballets and everything else, but the sentiment has always been, we're aware that this is going to be a tragedy when we hear that song, when we hear them say, there's a place for us. You know, there's even a verse to it that begins, I will take you away, take you far, far away from here. Like, all of that sentiment is missing. It is also, from a musical standpoint, such a glorious melody. And it was treated beautifully by Rita. But when you have it in one room with her doing an introspective moment, it doesn't fully support what that song can do or should do. So from an emotional standpoint, from a musical standpoint, that was unfortunate from our perspective.
Yeah, it also it lent a whole nother issue, which is the staging in the final scene. And Rachel did a beautiful job. It was not nearly as, in my opinion, not nearly as emotional as Natalie Wood's performance. And a lot of that had to do is because she didn't have the right setup. She's singing the wrong song.
She's singing "I Have a Love," right?
Yeah.
At the end, you're right. Instead of "Somewhere."
So she's singing "Tonight."
Yeah.
She's singing. You're not setting up Maria's tragic place right there, her tragic emotional place. You're setting up a hopeful melody, and then the actor is trying to play against that.
Right.
So she was really not set up for success in that final scene. She did a great job. It just didn't have the weight that it could have had.
What's interesting, though, a little historical knowledge here before we go for the 1957 stage production ended with her singing "I Have a Love," not "Somewhere." "Somewhere" was only changed in the movie, and then every production since has done it that way. So maybe this is Spielberg's decision because, as I said at the beginning of this, the Broadway cast album is how he came to this film. So in his mind, "I Have a Love" is the "Somewhere" for his experience of it. And
but she's singing Tonight.
But but "I Have a Love" is also. I mean, I had forgotten that, but that also has a great fatalistic harmonic structure to it. You know, so choosing yet a different song
somewhere, if someone was coming to me and saying, we're going to workshop this musical, which song should we use here? 10 times out of 10, I would say "Somewhere" out of any of those songs. That's the right sentiment for that final moment between them.
When Tony's been shot, what did you think, Steve? What do you think?
So first of all, just going back to Rita and "There's a Place for Us," I 100% agree. I loved it when she started. It was very moving, and I wish it had gotten passed off to Maria. I totally agree with that. I didn't bounce on it as much. It was because I thought her performance was so good in the moment, so it still totally worked for me. But musically, in terms of the sound of it, the harmonics of it, the dissonance of it, or whatever, that's the part that didn't work for me as much. But I was still totally in the moment. I didn't get thrown out the way it sounds like you two did.
Yeah, I think
what makes you think I got thrown out of the moment, Steve?
It might have been when you were going back like this.
I think the overall ending feels rushed, which is ironic considering it's 6 minutes longer, but it felt rushed. And I didn't feel that's the one thing that I would take away that bothered me, even though hardly anything bothered me about this version.
Yeah.
That ending. I didn't feel the weight of it.
We are in the same boat.
Yeah. And it may be connected to the fact that I also think Ansel was the weakest of them all in terms of his portrayal of Tony and the singing, and remove the off-camera stuff we're talking about the film. For me, I just didn't feel he was 100% dialed in. And as Milena referenced earlier, I didn't buy him as a singer necessarily. And I thought he was kind of a trained actor to sing as opposed to a singer. And I thought some of his duets and then some of his stuff with Valentina, I didn't feel that as powerfully, so that by the end it was Rachel who was doing the heavy lifting, and so that ending didn't 100% work for me.
Yeah, there's also something about it just being 4 sharks, 4 jets.
Mm.
It felt very symmetrical and staged, and also just I want everyone who's been involved in this story to be here to witness this moment, to all together say we got to find a better way. And when it was just kind of a few people from either side who were there to see it, it didn't have the gravity that I was looking for that final moment. And then the point of view even was a little odd as they're taking him out and we're with Maria, but then we end on Valentina and Chino.
Yeah.
It just did not seem to fully resonate the way I wanted that final moment to in an otherwise near perfect movie. That moment, the somewhere, and we could talk a little bit about Ansel. I think he did a great job. He really did lovely work. And I think I found I liked him more and more as we went along.
Oh, okay.
I also thought that his scene work, like at the end when he finds out Maria's dead, that expression on his face just broke my heart. He did just incredible work. The setup for him with Something's Coming. That's our moment to meet Tony and to get to know him. But he was talking to Valentina the whole time. So I felt over here.
And yet, I'll say from the actor-director side of things, acting is hard. Acting authentically while you're singing,
sure,
harder.
Must be very
harder. Bernstein music, Sondheim lyrics, not easy. And you have to have a lot of experience to really do that, and especially on camera, because as we all know, the camera sees everything. So if there's any emotional disconnect, your words are extended because you're singing long phrases, and if you don't keep that connection, it's very clear. And Ansel did do a very good job, and he just didn't have, in my opinion, the experience to really carry that on film. I bet he'd be fine on stage. And in fact, if he did more stage work, he might get more comfortable with that and be more comfortable to do it on film. But then if you have a lead actor and this is the moment when you're supposed to get to know him, don't put him by himself. So in a way, I don't know if it was a choice. I don't know when that choice was made, but as a director, if I have an actor that's struggling, and Steve can speak to this, you give them an activity. You give them something to do. You have them move through the space. You get their body activated. You give them something more to play off of. And so I don't know if that was part of the reason that Valentina is part of Something's Coming, but when I watched it, I was like sort of diagnosing from both in front of and behind the camera, going, there may be a lot of reasons.
It's an interesting diagnosis. I think that certainly makes sense. If we're comparing to 61, we're with this character singing Something's Coming. It's an internal song. It's written to be him connecting internally, saying, I'm feeling something. When you are immediately in a room with another person and telling that person, I'm feeling something, it's no longer an internal song. It's not, the function of it is different. And I actually think whether that was the diagnosis and the solution on their part to help Ansel, I think it probably hurt him. That had we been with him and just gotten to know his heart.
I do have to say, though, Ansel did all of his dancing.
That's true. Very true.
There apparently were no dance doubles, and I was looking for the stitches in Cool because he did a lot in that one. I was like, is there? She's like, nope, that shot's still going. Did they do face replacement? I'm looking.
And he's a tall, lanky dude.
Yeah, but apparently no, he did it all. He trained, and he went to LaGuardia High School, so I know in that program that dance is required. So he has studied dance. I don't know how proficient of a dancer he was back in the day, but I got to give him props for that.
Yeah, good driver and a good dancer, apparently.
Yeah.
Steve, thoughts on Ansel Lego? But is there anything in the film that you didn't like besides the choreography, as you mentioned earlier?
Well, it's not that I didn't like the choreography. It's just that the choreography in 61 is so iconic.
Fair enough.
I watching it the second time, I liked his performance better than I had liked it in the first time. I think that Tony is not a very forgiving role. Like it's because it's kind of the least dynamic of all the main characters.
Yeah.
And they fortunately added a lot to him that made him a much more interesting character, particularly with the anger thing. But it's funny the now that you say it, and I'm picturing the, you know, that song and his introduction, I completely agree, but I didn't bump at it on the time. Although this is where watching it the second time, it took until I got, you know, to cool that I was really 100% in. The other thing I think that's really interesting, by the way, is how central Tony and Maria are to the conflict in a way that they're not as central to the conflict in the original. They were going to have that rumble regardless.
Oh yeah.
But now Bernardo's agenda is about Tony. And I think too, another, and again, it's just these little brilliant things, is the staging of their first of them meeting, putting it behind the bleachers. Now it's suddenly it's a private moment. And if you watch, you know, and Milena, you could speak to this too, is like the beat work in their dance, the meeting each other, all the little tiny details of their performance is so much better. And the fact that they're going to be discovered, and the fact that Tony is trying to make this okay. He, you know, him taking punches, a whole bunch of punches at the beginning of that fight, that shows a lot of restraint then, which we then see broken, you know. So yeah, me too.
Yeah, I love the.
Okay, yeah, you bring it.
I was going to say I love the moment behind the bleachers, and that's one of the times where the original choreography is done there.
And I like the causality. You guys mentioned that over and over again. This makes more sense that Bernardo is pissed about this because he sees a white man coming out from behind the bleachers with his sister. So there's all kinds of places he goes. And remember, later in the film, he says, "Gringos, they ruin everything. Gringos, they." So there's a real, which is very topical to what we're, you know, hearing and speaking about more openly now. We see the history of that, and we see what can happen. And so that's more understanding rather than the prideful thing of like, oh, don't talk to my sister. That's a whole nother thing. Whereas this feels more cultural and more powerful. And he's not a rival gang member. It's a white man coming around the corner with his sister. And so that's why the rumble is set up in the bathroom rather than at dock. So it connects. It makes more sense, makes it more potent. Sorry.
Yeah, and to everyone's point, that Romeo and Juliet here are at the center of our story. You know, it's Tony and Maria that caused the battle. And even on the subway, Maria says something to the effect of, we can't pretend what we do doesn't cause trouble.
Yeah.
And so that self-awareness that they have makes all the difference in the world. That she and Tony, even though they're on their first date, they're not agreeing. They're not seeing eye to eye on that. He's like, trouble is what they're made of. And he does. And so to see that front and center really helps to deepen it. But then you flip it for Bernardo's perspective, you know, when Tony stops him and says, you know, I think we just got off on the wrong foot. Bernardo starts asking questions, you know, what are your intentions for my sister? And tell me a little bit about you. You were in prison? Oh, great. We get it. We don't want that dude dating his sister. So, and then when he says, I love her, that's the punch. The love causes the violence.
We got about maybe 13 minutes before we wrap up, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're going to send in Streamlabs Super Chat, do it now. Let's talk about the final things here. We haven't even mentioned Anita DeBose that much. I mean, what an incredible performance here as Anita, Oscar-winning performance. What did you think that she brought to the role that allowed it to stand out from Rita's performance? As Milena mentioned, even though she was there in the same film performing in front of her, what do you think about what do you think about what she did that made it separate itself out so powerfully in a way that Mike Feist, unfortunately, did not separate out for Oscar voters? What it is about Anita's performance that separated her out?
That's an interesting question because, yeah, I think Mike Feist really had a different take. It's in the writing and the direction. The whole production had a different take on that character.
Yeah.
I don't think that Ariana DeBose. I don't think her performance was massively different than what Rita Moreno did, but she was very authentic. It didn't feel like she was she was trying to do something else. It was very much her, and it's good casting because she really embodied that role.
Yeah.
I think she benefited a lot from the expanded world in the film.
Yeah.
She benefited a lot with the updated script and the context. I love that they gave her in the quintet, the Tonight Quintet, that they gave her all those moments that then we pay off later when she goes to the morgue and sees the body, and we see the montage moment of her in the police station. I think we just saw more of her and more of that journey, and she did it incredibly well. She really did, and she brought all the life and the vivaciousness and the passion. So I think she executed it beautifully.
For me, I think it's the layers. I think there's more layers and complexity in her performance. And I think particularly you said, Milena, exactly what I was thinking. The journey from Tonight to the morgue and then to, A Boy Like That, is that you can see what I love in her performance is that you can see multiple things going on at the same time. Like when she walks out after A Boy Like That, when she's going to docks and the cop is there and they had to do the stuff to like not tell the cop everything. And now she's out alone on the stairs and you could see in her face that she has the realization like, oh my God, am I really going to try to protect the guy that killed, the man that I love? Am I really going to, like, all of that insanity you could see play out on her face, I think. And as we get to, her final betrayal of saying, that Chino killed Maria, like it's one of the most horrible things, it's just horrible, but I'm 100% with her. Not that I think it's good that she did it, but emotionally understand that is where she is right now because of what she's been through. I think her performance is amazing.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, I agree. I think you both have brought up so many things, but at the bottom, at the end of the day, it's just her authenticity. Yeah. It's an Oscar winning role for perhaps a lot of people. It's just a beautifully constructed character and arc.
Yeah.
But you got to come with truth in every moment on a level that's very rare.
Yeah.
And she, got up there and it was a grand slam every single scene.
And her dancing technique is flawless.
Yeah.
She is as a dancer's dancer. I'll say that.
Her shoes were melting off her feet in America because it was so hot. They had to keep replacing her shoes.
Wow.
Yeah. She's
amazing. The changes in both the relationships, because to connect to the Anita thing, Anita is more of a driving force in this version of Anita and Bernardo than she is in the 1961 version. George Takei is very much the old school Latino machismo guy.
Right.
Whereas Alvarez's version or interpretation with Spielberg and Kushner is more of a guy, I have to do this because I have nothing else, but I want to be a boxer and I have a potential. There's other things that I could possibly be, but the situation, the circumstances, I'd rather be doing that than this, but I have to do this because of what's going on. Anita rules that roost more strongly because of Ariana DeBose's portrayal. There's a confident, strong intelligence and sexuality to her that, although was there in the certainly with Rita's performance, it's more confidently overt, I think, in this version of it. It makes her very attractive to watch and listen and follow throughout the movie overall. Steve, anything that I haven't brought up that you want to kind of touch on or hit on that I might have overlooked here?
I want to return to the crazy statement I made when we did our review. And for David and Milena, here's what happened the first time I watched the movie. Is I was texting with Karen and I went, man, this movie's really good. Wow, this is really good. And then I texted, this might be better than the original. And then I texted, I think this is better than the original. And then the last thing I texted as I'm writing to her is I wrote to her, and this is what I said when we did the review. There's an argument that this might be the greatest movie musical ever made.
Wow.
Now, that is when I started watching the second time. I went, okay, I got swept up in things. I probably went too far. And then as we got into that sequence of incredible numbers, I started to go back. And here's what I will say now. I can't say that. I think we need to wait 10 years until we can do a Cine-Files episode on it and really have time to think about it. But I think it is unquestionably one of the greatest movie musicals ever made, in the top, because I was looking at like what the AFI list is, and it's Singing in the Rain, Wizard of Oz, Sound of Music. Those are the ones they list. And I'm like, I put this right up with those.
Oh, yeah.
I put this one.
Totally.
Well, that's a good place to start our wrap up then. Milena and David, final thoughts on this movie. Is it better than the 1961 original? Do you need 10 years, or do you think you can say confidently right now, or is it a tie, or do you not want to say for professional reasons? So I'm throwing it all out there. So whatever you want to say.
I'll
go ahead.
weigh in on this and say that it is one of two of the greatest movie musicals of all time, and you can choose if it's 61 or 21, but it is one of the two best movie musicals of all time.
Wow. Strong political statement. I like that.
Yeah. I don't need 10 years. But I'm in David's camp. Like, I think we do a disservice to both of them to say to make us choose.
Okay.
Because I'll go back to my initial response to, oh wait, Steven Spielberg's going to remake West Side Story, which is the 61 was so of its time. And it was more true to the Broadway stage production, and it was so groundbreaking. And I have great reverence for it. I think the new version gave it the context that we as a modern audience crave. If you had made the 1961 version today, it would not do as well, because and that's my favorite thing about revivals. It's for a new generation. It's for a new taste. It's for new desires, and they did it beautifully. So I want both.
Yeah, there's one more thing about this. There's a difference between a remake and a reimagining.
Yeah, this is a reimagining. Yes.
Yep. And this is a reimagining.
Yes.
So it's not easy to just apples to apples compare them.
Fair enough. Steve, thoughts?
Well, I first of all, I feel very good that my musical experts are along with me on how damn good this movie is. And I really, here's what I think is just so sad is that all of us have said in one way or another, wouldn't it be great if people said, yeah, let's do more movie musicals. And unfortunately, the exact opposite is going to happen because this didn't do well. The In the Heights didn't do well. And so Hollywood is going to go, nope, musicals, that's not a good idea. And what I do hope, though, I hope this becomes a movie like Citizen Kane, like a lot of other great films that took a little while for people to realize how good it is, because it is so damn good.
Yeah, I couldn't choose between the two because of emotional connections, right? 1961 will always be a very, very special seminal moment in this Latino kid's life who was growing up, watching that with his mom, watching that with his dad at 10 years old, and understanding film and understanding what could happen, how we could be represented. It wasn't until later that I found out Shakira's wasn't Latino, or that Natalie Wood had no Latino in her.
Greek guy.
Yeah, right, exactly. I was like, what? Brown makeup? Son of a, it's all those things. But this one, I still loved it, and I still loved it for what it was about. And then this one comes along and has even more of a Latino bent, has even more of the story of our perspective. And we are equal now in this film, whereas in the 1961 original, we're not very much equal. We are equal here. And that makes me love it even more. And then the reimagining, as David pointed out, the reimagining of this is so authentic yet respectful, so different yet reverential, and it's so from the dress with the red sash and these little hints, these little touches, enough to let you know they respect the material, but they're going to walk their own path. And I think that makes it one of the greatest movie musicals ever made, and I absolutely would put it up there in the top 5. And I need some time eventually to kind of really appraise where I would put it, but it's maybe even higher rather, but it's certainly in my top 5 right off the bat. And I've seen it 3 times now, and it carries no less of an emotional weight or emotional punch every time I watch it. And it's because of the phenomenal work by Kushner in the adaptation, Spielberg's direction, and all the actors, the costuming, the choreography, the music, all of it. Just such a fantastic reimagining that works on so many levels. And it is a damn crime that it really didn't make any money and should have won numerous Oscars, including Best Picture, in my opinion. Best Director, best everything.
Across the board.
Oh, yeah, across the board. It should have matched what the 1961 original had.
Right. I think the only thing it matched is the box office from 61.
Yeah, right, but not adjusted, sadly.
Not adjusted.
Not adjusted. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to David Cornue and Milena Govich for joining us. Please, both of you, it's our honor to have you on the show. Anytime you can hang out, but please let us know, let everyone know who might be discovering for the first time or who love you guys so much, where they can find everything you got going on.
You can check out my Instagram, which is Milena Govich, at Milena Govich, and that's where I post all the things that I'm up to. And you I post David's too, because he's not very good with
my Instagram that one day I expect I will try to use at David Cornue.
I would like him to use
it's our pleasure to be here. This was so much fun. We love talking to you guys, and congrats on the podcast.
Hey, Milena, do you have, what's the next TV show that's coming out? Is there another one coming out that people could look out for?
Yes, the next one to air will be Good Sam. It's a new CBS medical drama with Jason Isaacs and Sophia Bush.
Right.
And I think that airs on the 27th. If that's a Wednesday, then it airs on the 27th, I think.
That's him and his daughter, right? His daughter is the story.
Yeah, the 27th on CBS. Yep.
And you've been doing Law and Order and...
Yes, done a bunch of FBI Most Wanted and Law and Order recently and an Equalizer. And so somehow this singer-dancer chick is just, I direct action procedurals now.
Do we see a movie musical from you in the future? From both of you in the future?
That's a big yes.
Yes.
Okay. That is 100%. If we can use all of our magic and trickery to get somebody to give us money, that will be happening. Fair
enough. I just want a 5 and under. I'll take a 5 and under, please. I'm not asking for much. Steve, what do we got to tell them?
You can follow the show on Twitter at Cine_Files, the Cine-Files podcast on Instagram. Check us out on Facebook. We're always posting stuff there. You can support the show at patreon.com/the Cine-Files. I'll put up a page for West Side Story. You can buy both versions or stream them through cinefiles.net.
Get it in 4K.
And you could, what?
Get it in 4K, people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you can follow me at SR Morris on Twitter, SR Morris1 on Instagram, and Enterprise Incidents for all your Star Trek needs.
That's right. Him and Scott Matt's doing a fun show there, Enterprise Incidents. For those of you who have been monitoring the Chicago Star Trek convention, go and listen to the stuff that Steve and Scott are doing on Enterprise Incidents. As for me, you can find me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. That's right. The old man's on TikTok, and you can find me on Twitch as well. The Outlaw Nation, all one word. Doing a lot of watch-alongs on Twitch. I might do a West Side Story 4K watch-along on Twitch, so come and hang out with me with some facts and some figures and some things and some new things to tell you about that as we watch along. So that might be coming up real soon. And other than that, I've got the Top 10 and the Geek Buddies out there as podcasts for you all to enjoy, and my own YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Rocha Says. We can see all my stuff there in the world of entertainment. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to everyone sending a Streamlab and a Super Chat. Remember to hit a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel. We're so close to crossing 9,000 subscribers. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell button so you see when we're doing and dropping things like this on the channel itself, and listen to our podcast. And we love you madly. And we'll talk to you next time with another brand new The Cine-Files Live here from The Cine-Files. Peace.